Welcome to a Wild Mystery Podcast appears, where we discuss mysteries, histories, and occasionally conspiracies. I'm your host, Ollie.
And I'm your host, Belle. Today we will be discussing some sensitive topics, including murder of a child, sexual assault, stalking, and divorce and separation. If any of those topics do not interest you, we encourage you to check out our other episodes on almost all podcast platforms.
This isn't a treat yourself moment. Take care of yourself.
Respect your mental health boundaries.
Self-care yourself. So today we are discussing the case of Beverly Jarosz, a 16-year-old girl who was murdered in her home. Her case has never been solved. And I want to warn you guys that this might be a tough one for me to get through because it kind of touches on some of my own fears. But I do think it is an important one to talk about.
And honestly, this one might get me too because of my personal, one particular family member that I worry about significantly who will remain unnamed because I'm not going to expose them to more BS than they already need to be have.
I have a little sister, and Beverly's sister is involved enough in this case that there were certain quotes that I have yet to read through without tearing up. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, and luckily it's like I think we're close enough, so it's like I'm hoping we can kind of balance each other out with it.
Yeah,
either that or it's just gonna magnify and make it worse, and we're both
we're just gonna and it's gonna be another Amber Hegerman case. That one, man. Okay,
that one was rough.
Yeah,
if y'all haven't listened to it yet.
If you haven't listened to it yet and you don't think you can handle this case, you cannot handle that one.
Don't handle that one.
Yeah. Beverly Jarosz was born on October 1st, 1948, to parents Thaddeus and Eleanor Jarosz, which I don't think I spelled Thaddeus's name right. Anytime. Yeah. Anyway, her little sister Carol was 4 years younger than her, and they shared a room on the second floor of their home in Garfield Heights, Ohio. It was the only room on the second floor. Beverly and Carol were very close growing up. When Carol was little, Beverly would make up bedtime stories for her every night. And then when she got older, she got really into writing short stories and poems. She was described as quiet, secretive, loyal, and warm, but slow to trust people. She was known to be beautiful and loved jazz and classical music. She had brown hair and brown eyes, and she was very popular at school. Beverly was a junior at a then all-girls Catholic high school called Marymount High School. It's now co-ed. At the time, it was all girls. And she was also a volunteer typist at Marymount Hospital. She spent her free time at the Cleveland Museum of Art and wanted to go to college and become a teacher. So she lived, this is just like quick little thing, she lived in Garfield Heights, but Marymount was very close to Garfield Heights from what I can gather.
I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of counties probably.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's probably really like an Anchorage, Eagle River kind of thing.
Yeah,
which topical for that's something everyone will get.
Yeah,
but anyway, Beverly really loved writing poetry, and for Christmas, her father had given her a gold embossed notebook to write her poetry in, and told her if she filled it up, he would send it in to try and get him published. I'd actually like to include a couple of her poems because I think it helps us get a feel for who she was. And also I'm reading one that she wrote that is sadder later in this case. So,
okay.
So this one is Ode to a Stick, dated June 16th, 1964. And by the way, when you get this book, you open up to this page and there is the poem on one side and a picture of a puppy chewing on a stick on the other.
Oh, that's cute!
Yeah.
If he has a tendency to steal sticks, maybe he stole our stick. Oh, little lad, how horrible a deed you have done, to have deprived us, nature worshippers, of our twig. We have sorrowfully searched for our stick, but in vain. Alas, it is nowhere to be found around. Where is it? In the depths of the earth? In the infinity of the universe? Or perchance it lies within some interplanetary object? Can fate be so cruel as to deny us of our beloved chunk of nature? In memoriam of our long-lost twig, whose memory we shall always cherish.
That was just such a cute poem. I couldn't not include it.
It's like, oh, that's just adorable. That was a very cute.
Yeah.
very cute.
This one, which is probably my favorite of the ones that I've read from her, was an untitled one, jaded, dated July 17th, 1964. What is this thing called time? Time is measured eternity. It is that which is counted between the meetings of foolish lovers. Time is a wilted flower or a dead bird. It is a graying half moon in a midnight sky. Time is death itself.
I'm sorry, she was how old at the time of writing that?
At most 16. I think this was 16 when she wrote this. She was a fucking amazing poet. And
Well,
fuck. I'm pretty sure she was 16. Yes, 16. Beverly was gifted that notebook that I mentioned on Christmas, and then on the morning of December 28th, the same year, 1964, Beverly and Carol, who were 16 and 12 respectively at the time, waved their parents off when they headed into work, and then around 10:30, the girls left for the 1 to 2 mile walk to their grandmother Marie Vinek's house. I could be butchering that last name, and I'm sorry. Mary lived a couple miles away, but in the same neighborhood. After they arrived, Beverly called a couple of her friends, Barbara and Margie, to make plans to meet up. And they decided the plan was that Barbara was going to go swing by Beverly's home at 1:30, and then they would walk together to Margie's. Because of those plans, at noon, Beverly says goodbye to her grandmother and sister and starts off towards home. She actually ended up getting a ride from an 18-year-old man who was a neighbor of her grandmother's because the man's mom saw her walking and asked him to give her a ride because it was cold. I don't know if he knew her, but I actually kind of suspect that he probably did, mainly because people described her as slow to trust strangers. When they arrived at her house at 12:10-ish, the man didn't see anything weird on the street or in the driveway, but he didn't stay or go inside, so he doesn't, he couldn't have said what was going on inside.
Right.
Beverly went inside, and it's thought that she turned the radio on, put her coat on the banister, and then put her purse on the kitchen table. Sometime after she arrived, a man called Steven Stankovich, which was a colleague of Beverly's father, called the house, and Bev took down a message for him, or from him. And then at 12:40, a jeweler dropped by looking for Eleanor, Beverly's mom, to tell her the necklace that she dropped off was ready for pickup. At about 1 p.m., either Beverly calls her mom at work or her mom calls her, depending on the source. And Beverly is able to relay the message from the jeweler.
I think it's weird that a jeweler stops by.
I know. I thought that was weird too. Remember that this is the 1960s.
Well, I know, but even still, it's just kind of like, if you're going to drop it off, or if you're going to drop by,
yeah.
Why wouldn't you just bring the fucking necklace?
I know. That really, I was very confused about that. But,
I digress.
Yeah. Or actually, I think there were a couple sources that I think said that there was something wrong with the necklace and the jeweler was letting them know. But
okay.
So I'm not totally sure. I think we know that a jeweler dropped by and it was about a necklace. Okay. But
yeah, I get
you. And
10 minutes later,
they chatted for a bit before Beverly says she has to go get changed before Barbara gets there. About 10 minutes later, at 1:10-ish, Beverly's grandmother calls. Beverly sounded like she was in a rush and told her grandmother that she had to go because Barbara was there, and then she hung up. And then between 1:20 and 1:25, which is 10 to 15 minutes after that call, Barbara and her mother actually did arrive at the Jarosz house. There are no cars in the driveway or near the home, and Barb's mom leaves while she still goes up to the house. She goes up to the house. So I want to take just a second here to highlight that there are a few things that happen in this case that we as women born in the 1990s are going to cringe about.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm mentally preparing myself now.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that this was the 60s. It's not that crime wasn't happening, but I think people tended to feel safer more often than we do today. They tended not to take the kind of precautions that we were taking today. They weren't as common. So when I was 16, my parents never ever would have left before they saw me walk into my friend's house, or
Well,
at
fuck, I do
least
that with you.
yeah.
I'm like, it's the whole I text you as soon as I get home. I make
Yeah.
sure you do the same thing,
And I forget most of
right?
the time.
And I've told you before, I'm like, if I don't get a text in a certain amount of time, guess who's showing up at your house
Yeah.
anyway, even though I just saw you.
So, you know, my parents at least would have wanted to lay eyes on my friend to know that they were there. But it is because of cases like this that those kinds of precautions are taken.
Yeah.
It's because of cases like this that we text people when we get home and
Yep.
things like that. So just keep in mind when we are going through this, the things that we would have done in this case were just not as common at this time period. Anyway, when Barb arrives, she notices that the side door is ajar, but the storm door is locked. She rings the doorbell on the front door, but the radio is playing very loudly, and she thinks it must be by the door because she can actually make out the words of the song playing, which is, yeah, very loud.
Mm-hmm.
No one comes to the door, and she wonders if Bev can't hear the doorbell over the music. She hangs around for about 15 more minutes, passing the time by flipping through a magazine out of the Jarosz mailbox. At one point, she hears a kind of crashing or banging noise, which she described later as like a dresser falling over. And then eventually she starts walking home, thinking that Beverly might be teasing her or standing her up. She calls Beverly a few times throughout the afternoon, but no one ever answers the phone. Sometime later, Margie calls Barb to ask why she and Bev never showed up, and Barb fills her in on what happened when she went to go get Beverly. Margie then calls Beverly's grandmother, trying to track her down. Carol was there when she picked up the phone and later said, upon Margie telling her that Bev had never shown up, Mary's, the grandmother's reaction was, "Oh my God, she's dead." And we will understand why she had that fear immediately later. This is a rough one.
Yeah, you're gonna hear me be quite silent in this episode, mainly because I'm trying very hard to make sure that I'm not being disrespectful, because yes, it was the 1960s. I would have broken in.
I honestly
vaguely know how to pick a lock in several different ways.
I think it saved Barb's life that she didn't try. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, I'm also a bad bitch, so try to take me on, bitch.
Yeah, and I'm also
check what happened.
I'm trying really hard not to be judgmental towards Barb because people really hated on her hard when this case started to come out.
Barbara's a grandma, right? No, Barbara's the friend. Sorry,
Barbara's the friend. Yeah.
Which I understand it from an outside perspective, but even today, people don't expect it to be put into these situations.
Yeah.
Most people don't think like watching a crime show.
Yeah.
Except for the people who have been obsessed with them and watched them since childhood.
Yeah.
There's a reason we have a mystery podcast.
Not everybody thinks like this. I grew up
watching Law and Order SVU and NCIS and Criminal Minds.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching things that would make a lot of people paranoid. I think they've kept me alive.
I wondered if Barb also had a bad feeling because she checked the side door.
Yeah.
Because that seems weird to me. And also because she called Bev through like multiple times.
Yeah.
Which, again, in the 60s, when you only had the landlines, nobody had cell phones.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's like, if for some reason I came out here and we had been told that, you and I were, going to hang out or something, and I knocked on the door, obviously with where you're at here, I've never even walked down to the outside of
But
here,
you could, yeah.
And I would.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, because you'd be more likely to hear me.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. Sorry, I'll let you get back into it, but it's interesting to see the changes from...
Yes, and I was especially
50 years ago.
I was especially kind of like when I saw that Barb's mom left pretty much immediately. I was like, "Oh, like that's a change."
That's a thing that wouldn't happen now.
Yeah.
But This is,
This is
this is
why. Yeah.
absolutely no hate. This is
Yeah,
just
no.
a discussion on how things are changed and how things are different. We are going to express some frustration. It is not directed at anybody
No.
except for the situation.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, for the time period, this stuff went way faster. This particular situation, it went way faster than I thought it could have gone.
Yeah.
Because, so, Mary, the grandmother, gets a call from Margie, who is the friend that they were supposed to go over to.
Mm-hmm.
Mary, again the grandmother, then calls Thaddeus, Beverly's father, to tell him that no one has seen his daughter since noon.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thaddeus leaves work and arrives home at 4:30, where he finds the side door ajar with the storm door unlocked.
Yeah.
Yes. And the back door, which the family never used, was also unlocked. The front door was still locked, as he expected it to have been, and nothing is missing, though the radio is still blaring. Upstairs, he finds Beverly's body lying face down in a pool of blood and calls the police immediately.
That makes me sad.
Yeah. The lead investigator on this case at the time was William Horrigan, spelling, who followed tips related to this case until his death, and he called this the worst killing he'd ever seen. The coroner, Samuel Gerber, who had worked on the Cleveland torso murders in the 30s, said it was, quote, as vicious a crime as I have seen in my 29 years as a coroner, end quote. This was after the Cleveland torso murders.
Yeah.
Her cause of death was found to be strangulation via rope, but there were also 40 to 42 stab wounds on her, and he said that just those would have been enough to kill her as well.
42?
40 to 42, yep.
Jesus.
Yep. So there was no sign of a struggle found on the ground floor and no signs of forced entry. Beverly was found on the floor between her and Carol's beds, partially atop a blood-soaked blanket that was usually at the foot of one of the beds. There was no sign of sexual assault, but it was speculated that it might have been part of the motivation because her sweater was torn down to her hips, her blouse and bra were shoved up, buttons from her blouse had been ripped off in the struggle, and she was nude from the waist down. Do you need a second?
Nope.
Investigators thought it was possible that either the scene was staged to look like a sexual assault was a motive, or that the killer was interrupted. Hold on.
Hence her friend, probably.
Yes. There were 3 pieces of rope found at the scene. Each were about 20 inches long. Sorry, I have a tape measure. That's not very long.
Mm-mm.
It's shorter than my arm, if that gives you any
rough estimate.
Yep, from home. They were 2 of them had loops tied on each end, and I don't know if the 20 inches was including the loops or was just how long the ropes were estimated to be before the loops were tied.
They were probably, they probably untied one of them and counted
Probably.
Because once the loops are tied, that's a lot shorter of an amount to be able to move with.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking, is if it was including the loops, that isn't very restrictive.
Yeah, because even just...
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is kind of a rough one. So, it was discovered that the rope was manufactured in Hickory, North Carolina. It was a sash cord that was often used as a clothesline, and it was weathered. To me, that suggested it had also been used as a clothesline.
Mm.
It was believed to have been brought to the scene by the killer because there wasn't any more of it found in the home, and it was believed, due to the rope marks, that Beverly was strangled from the back. From behind, I mean. Again, she was stabbed between 40 and 42 times, mostly in her neck, chest, and shoulders. And that is, you can tell what the perpetrator was aiming for with, what the area of that was. You can tell what they were trying to do. No knife was found at the scene, but the medical examiner stated it was a very sharp blade that was probably about 3 to 5 inches long. Police speculated it could have been Beverly's brass letter opener, which she kept in her room. But in an interview in 2014, Carol said that she had the letter opener somewhere. And if that's the case, I don't think it could have been used in the murder because they said that no knife was found at the scene.
Yeah.
So Beverly had defensive wounds on her fingers, but her fingernails were intact. And as far as has been released by investigators, no DNA was found under her nails. Her face was slashed on both cheeks, on the left from her ear to the point of her chin, and on the right from her ear to the base of her throat, which is weird. Yeah.
Well,
let me see if I can pull up a picture of her, because she had a strong jawline, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
beautiful.
she was gorgeous. That's a rare. Okay. The nightstand between the beds in the rooms was untouched. The rugs on the floor were moved, and one had drops of blood on it. And Beverly's bed sheets and footboard were bloody. There was also a 9 by 5 inch hole punched in the wall over her bed, which might seem kind of.
It was probably like an A-frame house.
Yeah. So that's their bedroom window. I'll post these pictures online, and that's the hole. Basically, she had like kind of a vertical wall immediately next to her bed, and then the ceiling kind of slopes up.
Yeah. It looks like at most that's probably
she probably could have
5-foot wall before it starts the incline.
Yeah, I would say even less than that because of this guy. He's kneeling.
He's kneeling?
Yeah, you can see his.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that bed looks tiny. Wow, the perspective in this photo is weird. But
yeah, I mean,
but
that's really confusing.
Yeah, I know.
So very much an illusion.
So she probably could have like sat up in bed and not hit her head, but she couldn't have like jumped on her bed or anything.
Yeah.
So approximately 12 fingerprints and bloody palm prints were discovered at the scene, but all but 3 were Beverly's or her family's. I'm pretty sure nothing came out of the 3 that weren't because it wasn't mentioned anywhere that they'd ever been found a match for anything. Immediately upon seeing the scene, Garfield Heights police requested the help of Cleveland police, knowing that they were just not equipped to handle this kind of case on their own. Sniffer dogs found a trail from Beverly's room to the back door across several gardens and then stopping on a street one over from her house. Footprints were found on the curb, but nothing came from them. A clump of hair that may have been Beverly's was also found in the back of the house. I want to take a second to talk about that because it is weird to me that the killer almost certainly used the back door, but the side door was also definitely unlocked.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder
if they were alone.
Well, if they were alone or if they were checked on Barb at some point. Which
is terrifying.
Again, I think that Barb was extremely lucky not to have been attacked on this day.
Yes.
Police interviewed more than 300 people. One neighbor saw a 20-something man walk down the Jarosz driveway at about 1:45 p.m., which, remember from our timeline, was about 4 minutes after the jeweler showed up. So in my mind, this could have just been the jeweler.
Well, no, you said at 12:40 the jeweler showed up.
Oh, yeah, just kidding. Never mind.
So it's an hour.
Okay, yeah. So an hour after the jeweler showed up. The man didn't seem in a rush, and he got into a car that was parked between 2 others on the street, which conflicts with Barbara and her mother's statements that there were no cars on the road or on the street. And I'm deleting that because that's not true. And again, this is about math 20-25 minutes after Barb was initially dropped off. So probably 5 to 10 minutes after she left. A delivery man. And I mean, the thing with that is like, yeah, it's possible that 3 cars came and parked on the street in that time, but I think Barb would have mentioned that.
Yeah.
And this was a work day.
Yeah, and I mean, not to be crass, but she did not inherently see any trauma from this event,
Mhm.
so she would be more likely to remember details like that.
And she hung around for 15 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
as opposed to someone who broke into her friend's house to be like, "Yo, what the hell's going on?" and then subsequently finding her friend's body.
mhm,
That sort of trauma could be enough to make, like,
to
those
make things like that.
memories not apparent. And I'm not
And
saying that she didn't
the
experience a
neighbor,
trauma, but
yeah,
it's different.
but also for the neighbor, like, you can't tell from what has been released, but you don't know if this was like, the neighbor glanced over, saw this, and was like, "Ah," or the neighbor, like, was like, "That man looks suspicious," and was
Like,
actively, like, watching it and
yeah, people
taking
watching.
yeah. But anyway, a delivery man also saw a young man walking down the street at about the same time as the murder, but later on, that man and his parents came forward, and he was cleared of any suspicion. A lot of Beverly's male friends came forward on their own to take polygraphs and get fingerprinted, and it seems like the main thing that came from that was the ability to rule most of them out as suspects, which, of course, in cases like this is extremely helpful.
Mm.
Um, quick side note that polygraphs were trusted way more back then than they are today.
Yep.
They are not usually admissible in court today.
Yep.
So, and I will talk about polygraphs someday.
Mhm.
But at this point in the case, we should talk about Beverly's stalker. The year before, she had been followed around an art museum by a man she didn't know, but more recently, and I personally think this sounds unrelated, she had been getting tons of hang-up calls, sometimes up to 10 to 12 a day.
You think it's unrelated?
I think her being followed around the art museum is unrelated. Because all the stuff, the stalker stuff, that sounds like somebody, to me, it sounds like somebody who knew her.
Mhm.
But I'm not a psychologist. The last hang-up call she had received had been in early December of that year. In July, which is also weird to me, because that seems like it, because it was the 28th that this happened. So that's a significant amount of time.
Mhm.
In July, the family had found a package in their mailbox addressed to Bev. Inside was a sterling silver bracelet and ring in a box from a major department store. It was wrapped and had a ribbon, but there was no from name. Now, I don't know this for sure, but to me, this sounds like it didn't have a full address. It sounds to me like this was put in her mailbox by somebody, that it
Yeah.
wasn't sent through the mail. Beverly, understandably, was alarmed and uncomfortable with this and refused to wear the jewelry, but I don't know if she kept them or not. About a month after the first package, they found a second package on the back porch, which again, that definitely says to me that was not a mailman.
Yeah.
Inside was a cheap golden brooch and bracelet. And this is my own personal opinion. It makes me wonder if the giver thought maybe she didn't like the silver or she didn't like the ring. So, or, didn't want to wear something as expensive as silver or as sterling silver out. So tried again with a different color and something
Mhm.
cheaper. Nonetheless, Beverly was, of course, still very uncomfortable and upset about the package and didn't wear those either. There was an incident at some point in the months before the murder when Thaddeus came home and found a man in the front garden staring up at the girl's bedroom window. He chased the man down the street but didn't end up catching him. I don't know if he intended to, but Understandably, Beverly had become very concerned about her safety while this was going on. She was getting jumpy, double checking locked doors, drawing the blinds when she entered a room, and occasionally wouldn't even open the door to people she knew, including her parents.
Mhm.
When she was away from home, she called to check in with her parents frequently, and that brass letter opener I mentioned earlier, she had actually bought for protection. As somebody who uses a letter opener for work frequently, I can tell you they're not actually that sharp, but I think you probably could sharpen one if you wanted to.
Mhm.
Sources say that the letter opener was never located after her death, but I'm not 100% sure that's true, mainly due to the same comment by Carol in 2014 that she had it somewhere.
Yeah.
But she didn't actually have it on her when she said that. She just said, it was a comment like, I have it somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not
Not ruling it out, but not
Yeah.
counting it.
Yeah. Over the years, there were several suspects and persons of interest, but no one was ever charged or arrested. There are a couple people in here that I'm not going to mention specifically because I think they are, it's a really, really wobbly case on them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not someone that the police say they've looked into, Beverly's boyfriend Roger was obviously looked into. He was described as a straight-laced conservative college student, and he had an alibi, but not a watertight one. He passed a polygraph, which was, of course, again, more accepted by investigators and lawyers at the time, and no one could really think of a strong motive for him. So I don't think he was looked into that strongly.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because then it was like, especially in small towns, you have a lot of people who was like, oh, well, they could never. Well, good enough.
Yeah. They also looked into Beverly's ex, Daniel. He was seen as a greaser, kind of a bad boy, which I just think greaser is so 60s.
It is very 60s. Actually, you said greaser, and the song Shake, Rattle, and Roll just popped into my head. It's a really good song, but...
He claimed that he was working at the time, but one of his neighbors said that they saw him return home in a hurry, but I didn't see any statement of what time they saw that. Basically, his alibi kind of ended up being about the same in credibility as Roger's, and he also passed a polygraph. It's also possible that he had stopped cooperating with the police more recently, but that's obviously not something that I can verify. And I think it is important to mention in cases like this, if you are being questioned by the police, get a lawyer, period.
It doesn't matter.
Even if you have nothing to hide, get a lawyer.
Yep. It's, if anyone has ever watched the Making a Murderer series on Netflix, that is a prime classic case of get a lawyer.
Don't say anything until you have a lawyer present.
Do not shoot yourself in the foot. Even if you know.
If you've watched No Way Home, which I have watched now.
Yes.
Yeah. There's that
moment. Did?
Yeah. I watched it on my birthday. There's that moment where the guy goes, "Why do you want a lawyer?" to Zendaya.
To Zendaya.
Yeah. And I'm like, because she's a minor.
Yeah.
I wanted to punch him. Anyway.
Yeah.
There was one of the Jarosz's neighbors, John, who was a college student who, quote, had an eye for Beverly. Which that's always such phrase. I know, that's such a weird phrase to me. It makes me cringe. He'd apparently spied on her sunbathing in the backyard one summer, but was pretty shy. And armchair detectives wonder, because of that shyness, if he might have been responsible for the packages. Which I actually think is possible, especially if my theory about the gifter wanting to try again with something cheaper in a different color is true. Because I think if it is, it shows some insecurity on the part of the giver.
Yeah.
But John didn't have an alibi, and his polygraph came back inconclusive. Again.
Well, and I doubt, yeah, you can fake a lot of stuff, and sociopaths and psychopaths can fake a lot of stuff, but the amount of rage showed in her murder, it doesn't sound like he would be capable of that, and I don't know if you went super into the suspects to look into them.
Not really.
It's not like we're the ones trying to solve the murder, you know what I mean?
There's just...
Yeah.
There's always something about, like, if somebody doesn't have an alibi, that doesn't mean they did the crime. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I hang around alone at home a lot. Which would mean I don't have an alibi unless you want to talk to my cats.
Or phone GPS.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. They didn't have those back here.
And car GPS.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, hey, I do have an alibi. But you can always leave your phone at home.
And not take your car.
Yep. Anyway.
This is not a tips for how to murder successfully.
Yeah. There have been people that have spectacularly failed at trying to get away with murders who have done those things.
Yeah.
But anyway, Some more general theories are that the stabbings were unplanned, thus explaining the two murder weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little less possible if the brass letter opener was the
Tool.
Because, or wait, wasn't the tool.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the person brought it to the
To
scene and then
yeah.
brought it away, that definitely seems premeditated.
Well, it could be used as a form of control with no intention of using it,
That's true, yeah.
but
Yeah. It's also possible that her killer either meant to rape her but was interrupted, likely by Barbara's arrival, or that I'm saying he, it might not have been a he, but probably, just meant to, I mean, okay. I say just as if that isn't, as if I would rather be just raped than just murdered, you know?
yeah.
But it's possible they meant to rape her and not kill her, but then thought that she could identify them, so ended up killing her. It's possible Barb interrupted the murder, period. Just like, regardless of anything else that the killer meant to do.
Or she could have fought back. I mean, you did say that she has defensive wounds,
Yeah.
and some people aren't prepared for that when they.
I'm pretty sure that she did fight back, yeah.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Is
Yeah.
she likely fought back, and that could have been the
thing that
turning
went,
point,
whoa, yeah.
set him off. Because there's been many cases of attempted rape turned murder where they were not expecting their their victim to fight back, and then subsequently they were murdered as a result of them fighting back.
Which again is not the person's fault. I would rather be murdered than raped. But
yes, I will go down fighting if I have to.
I think it is very likely that Barb interrupted the murder. Yeah. I think personally, I think it's confirmed.
It's pretty much confirmation for me.
And again, I think she is extremely lucky to have gotten out without being attacked that day.
Yeah.
I think due to the music blaring,
that was intentional to cover up the sounds.
I also think there could have been a lot of stuff going on inside that Barbara couldn't hear.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that she heard, what sounded like a dresser crashing over, which more than likely was at what point?
Yeah, at the part of the struggle, because nothing.
Nothing was
anything
about
a dresser, but I was being knocked over.
I was thinking the wall, maybe.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Paul.
So Paul Miles, a veteran assistant Cuyahoga County prosecutor, I may have butchered Cuyahoga, I'm sorry. He said about the case, the timing is unbelievable. There's a 90-second window here. The murderer was the luckiest, I guess you'd say, SOB in the world. 90 seconds and this never happens. Now, I don't know which 90 seconds he was talking about.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Because the time between Bev's mom calling and Barb arriving, or not, sorry, Bev's grandmother calling and Barb arriving, that's more than 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So
because she's saying, oh, Barb is here, which is more than likely when the murderer showed up.
Yes, and we are definitely going to talk more about that phone call because I have a lot of feelings about that and the potential timeline.
So I'm very curious to know what 90 seconds that he's referring to.
I genuinely don't know.
Kind of now want to call and be like, yo, I have a question.
So I think he might, I know for a fact investigators have said that they are keeping a lot close to the vest.
Makes sense
here.
Confirm.
Because this is, again, this was a very high profile case. There was at least one false confession. So in cases like that, police have got to keep some stuff close, Yeah, they just have to
identify false confessions, which
or false leads, false tips, any of that kind of shit.
I'm not going to let myself go into a rant about false confessions because I have opinions.
Yeah.
And they make me
That's
very
why I didn't mention anything about that person, because I don't want to give them attention. But anyway, it is very likely that this was a passionate, premeditated crime. Police believe that Beverly may have been attacked while she was changing, but the timeline, I think, is very confusing related to this, because it's believed basically that after the call with her grandmother, Beverly went upstairs to get changed, but that implies to me one of three separate options. One, that she left the person she believed to be Barbara at the door without touching base with them,
Mhm.
which seems like something she would not have done. Two, she let somebody who was not Barbara into her house and then went up to change while they were in the house, which also, due to her paranoia at the time, does not seem likely. Three, she checked the door, realized the person on the other side wasn't Barbara, and either let them know she'd be right down or didn't say anything and ran upstairs with them on the porch.
Mhm.
Any of these and her rushed tone on the phone seem really weird to me. Because why would she answer the phone if she still intended to change before answering the door? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
the phone was downstairs, her room was
Was
upstairs.
upstairs.
Why, say she'd been in the middle of changing, why would she run downstairs, answer the phone while who she believed was Barbara was out the door, and then run back upstairs to finish changing
Yeah.
without, you know,
Yeah.
why would, like, if she
It
believed
seems
somebody,
odd.
why would she, yeah, but then why would she have let somebody she wasn't expecting into the house when she knew she'd be leaving soon and was generally fearful at the time anyway? Um, but there's just like, there is something about her answering the phone and sounding all rushed because there was somebody at the door and then going upstairs to change that just does not seem likely to me.
Yeah.
It was speculated she might have left the door unlocked for Barbara and somebody else came in, but this also doesn't seem likely to me because of her paranoia.
Yeah.
I think, potentially maybe she opened the door in a rush. She, got off the phone with her grandma, opened the door. It wasn't Barb or nobody was at the door. And then when she closed the door, she forgot to lock it.
Mhm. In her
If,
haste.
yeah, if there was somebody on the other side of the door, I think that is less likely than
Yeah.
if, somebody knocked on the door, kind of ding dong ditched.
Yeah.
She opens the door, doesn't see anybody, shuts the door, forgets to lock it.
Right. Yeah.
So some people also think that she predicted her death because of a poem she wrote. It's called Thoughts on Life and was one of the few undated poems Carol later published for her. It goes, "From the depths of my soul there comes a certain fear. What if I should die within the next year? Life for me has just begun. All my dreams would be unfulfilled. All my work left undone. All my goals unreached. My life would have been in vain." And I feel
Yep.
sad that she felt that way because her
Yeah.
life wasn't in vain. But whether this was a prediction of things to come or just a way that she was kind of working through her anxiety about the stalker that she had, it's
Mhm.
very sad and it's very powerful.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily think it was anything deeper than her just feeling anxious and fearful and trying to work through that. So, the other pretty major thing, do you remember Steven Stankovich,
Mhm.
the Thaddeus's colleague who called when Beverly was home alone?
Mhm.
No one in Beverly's family recognized that name. Yep. He was not a colleague of Thaddeus, and some people speculate that this was a fake name, which I think is likely, and that the man on the line was actually Beverly's killer calling to make sure she was home alone. We don't know what she told him on the phone, so we can't tell for sure.
Mhm.
I know for me, as soon as my parents let me start answering the phone, they told me if they weren't in the house, I was supposed to tell them that I wasn't available.
Mhm.
And then later on, when I started to put together that, like, that's a code, everybody knows what that means, I started to make actual excuses like, oh, they're in the shower, they're taking a nap.
Yep. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. But again,
Mine would be, "Oh, sorry, they're washing dishes, so their hands are wet. They can't.
yeah.
Can I like, take a message?"
But again, I don't think they really thought,
It's a different time.
yeah, maybe didn't think that far ahead at that point.
Yeah.
So William Horrigan, the original lead investigator, he always thought that he knew who killed Beverly and just didn't have enough evidence to press charges. Every year on the anniversary of the murder, he called this suspect until one year the suspect started calling him first. This stuff always makes me wonder about tunnel vision. But Horrigan continued to work the case until after his retirement, until his death in 2004.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Do you not find it interesting that the suspect started calling him first?
I
Because
do,
that seems like mutual. And
but as a petty ass bitch, I may do that as well.
yeah, but it almost like, because I also get the petty aspect, but I also feel like it's more like a insult now, where it's
Yeah,
like,
you can't get.
you know
I
it's
know you
me,
can't get me.
but you can't get me.
Yeah. So I think it is equally likely that either this person was just fed up or
They
that
were
they
the killer.
were the killer. But, and I'm pretty sure police know who that person was, but I don't think. Well, okay, I know for a fact it has not been publicly released.
Yeah. Well, understandably.
The police in this case know how to handle the media. I'll just say that.
They know how to handle the media.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is to say, not.
Yeah. No comment.
Yeah.
Bitch.
I have thoughts about the media. Anyway, the family continued to live in the house after Beverly's death. It took Carol a long time to start sleeping in the room again, which is 100% understandable. And they kept everything the same, hoping that one day a jury would want to see the home, which was interesting to me. I didn't know juries did that. Eventually, Thaddeus patched up the hole in the roof using the same wallpaper that was already on the wall. Thaddeus and Eleanor did eventually separate and then divorced, but Thaddeus continued living in the home until his death in 2012.
It makes me so sad to see when couples break up as a result
of
a trauma, of a severe trauma happening in their family.
I'm gonna post this picture as well. There is this picture of the family just looking shell shocked, like
Yeah.
just especially
1,000-yard stare. Yeah.
Carol in the middle there, just looking like absolute, like I cannot describe it in any way other than just shell shocked, completely just like
shell shocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So they obviously took this very, very hard, and it was rough on the family. And yeah, it's always there's one of my first therapist, was telling me like everybody handles trauma in different ways, and it is often not when it's not often not until something happens that you realize the way that you handle trauma and the way that other people in your family handle trauma is just not
aligned.
Yeah, they just don't work together. You can't vibe with that.
Yep.
Which is it's really sad when that kind of stuff happens, but
absolutely
it just does. So Carol is the only surviving, to this day, member of the immediate Jarosz family. She currently has 4 kids and 4 grandkids. She says that her family was so worried about her after the murder that she wasn't left alone until the day that she got married. She actually went to stay in a convent for a while after she turned 18, I think. And she says she says in hindsight, it was absolutely a reaction to the murder, that she just like could not handle the situation. She just needed to go be away from everything. And Eleanor said about that she was really happy about it, actually, because it made her feel like she was safe. But she did eventually leave the convent. Eleanor died in 2018, but she and Carol have done a lot to try and keep Beverly's memory alive. Carol published a book of Beverly's poetry, first in 2016 and the second edition in 2020, which I bought and read, and it's very good. It's called Unfulfilled, which I think is named after that one poem. They describe it as a way to give her voice back. And Carol and Eleanor both wrote her little notes that were published in the book. Eleanor wrote, "My dearest Beverly, no words can describe my grief since your death. My only consolation now is that I will soon be with you. What a joyous reunion that will be. Love, Mom." I'm pretty sure that was written into 2016, 2 years before her death, but I'm not 100% sure.
Probably.
Because I have the 2020 version. Carol wrote, "To my dear sister Beverly, this book is being printed as fulfillment of a wish of yours that your poems be published posthumously. Beverly, you will live forever through your own words and in the hearts of those who have loved you and have been left behind. Throughout the years, I have missed having you near me to share our childhood memories and to be there for each other during the milestones of life. I miss you all the time, but when sleep eludes me, I miss you most of all. Love you forever, Carol."
I did in a minute.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah. Wait until this next one.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, in that 2014, I need to get a box of tissues on this
Yeah,
table.
we do. Jesus. You keep
I
coming
have
with
them.
the
They're
heavy
all back
hitter.
there. Yeah.
Keep coming with the heavy hitters. Jesus.
So in 2014, during an interview, Carol recounted a dream that she had recently had about Beverly, and I don't think I can tell it justifiably, so I want to read what she said, but I want to give a warning that this is the quote that I have not managed to get through without tearing up. And I haven't read it out loud yet, so...
Do you want me to try? If you give me a second, I can do
No,
it.
I'll give it a shot. "My last dream was weird. I dreamt we were at my old house. We were washing the car. My grandson was there in the garage, but Beverly was 16. I saw this threatening man coming towards her. I looked at her, and I looked at my grandson and said, I have to make a decision. Who do I go to? I went to my grandson and picked him up, and then somebody took her away. It's always that I find her and I lose her. She's gone." She said most of her dreams about Beverly are that she finds her in a crowd and then loses her. So,
Which is appropriate rationalization for a 12-year-old.
yeah.
Or for a person who was 12 at the time of her sister's death.
And I think it really shows how she felt about the whole situation, her emotions about it.
Yeah.
And this is why this case hits me very, very hard. It's Carol's telling about it.
Because it's the, I hate to say burden of survivors, but it really is the burden of the survivors.
It's just...
Look, I've been put in situations I'm a very family-oriented person. I have a very large family. Both the family that I have and the family that I have chosen. I consider Ollie's little sister to be my younger sister. She is very much like I've gone to ground for her before and would again in a heartbeat. And I know Ollie's the same way with family members that I have. And I think being women, I think we kind of have a bit more perspective on it, and having to see that someone went through this, and it's not just women, but I think women have a more realistic outlook on it because it happens to us.
Well, you talk about like when I was pretty little once, I don't remember this, but my parents took me and they went on a road trip. At one point, they stopped to use the restroom. It was pretty late at night, and the restroom was kind of like they were alone in this little, this was in Washington State, so it wasn't, backwoods kind of thing, but it was in the woods at a rest stop, and the restrooms were like kind of back in the woods. So they walk there, do the stuff, they're coming back, and my mom says to my dad, I'm glad that you're here because I wouldn't have felt comfortable coming back to use this restroom with just me and Ollie. Like us just being the two women, one little girl alone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have felt comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And my dad goes, "Oh, I didn't think about that." He said, "I was just appreciating how nice it was in this area." It never occurred to him
that how
until she said
actively
something.
we worry about getting
Well,
murdered
it didn't
or
occur to
attacked
him.
or
It
kidnapped
didn't occur to him that it was a dangerous place
situation. Yeah.
until
Or
she
place
said
situation,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. And you think about the times that, like, I, as a woman, have been walking home and my usual path would lead me through like a little patch of trees, but I decide to take another route because it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the times that you cross this road because there's a van parked on the side of the road that you're on.
Or you climb on the opposite side of your vehicle because there's a sketchy vehicle on your driver's side.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that life isn't also dangerous for men. It's just that men are not conditioned to think about danger
The way
the
that
same way
we
that we
are.
are.
There's,
And it's like,
the conversations had with young men are how to treat a woman right. The conversations had with young women is this is how you survive.
mm-hmm, this is how you
That
don't
is
get
the
murdered.
dichotomy.
And luckily, I have grown up in a family where my brother and my father understand that life is dangerous for us and that they don't fully get when we are seeing things in a different light, you know?
Yep.
And I live in a family where when my mom told my dad she worried when the door was left unlocked that somebody might come in and rape and kill her, that he started making sure the door was locked after that.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, he's still very paranoid about the door being locked.
Good.
So that's the kind of situation that I grew up in. And that is why when I hear things about human traffickers looking like weaponizing kindness
Yes.
in order to kidnap people, that is why I text my sister to remind her, don't go to a stranger's car. And that's so, because
well,
it's
and
so
it's
depressing.
so frustrating for me because I am the type of way that I am, and I am a very protective person. I am a very mistrusting person, but I am also very trusting. I am also very kind. And there are times when you aren't thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
People that have been overly cautious, overly paranoid, it can still happen to
Mm-hmm.
them. All it is preventative measures, and that scares the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm. So this happens in a few cases that I want to cover, but Carol lived my worst nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why this case is so hard for me emotionally. And that's that.
Yeah.
I don't know what else.
To
I, you know,
I relate very much to your fear. Now you know what my family looks like
mm-hmm,
and who I worry about more than anybody. And I worry for your sister too
mm-hmm.
cuz like I said I've known her since she was 11, 10,
See, I was
no,
14,
12,
so it was 10.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've known her since she was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm. And you worry about the people like that in your life,
Oh, absolutely.
you know?
It's like I said, I've got a really big fucking family, and the world is not as kind as it should be. The world is not
Mm-hmm.
as safe as it should be. And I like what you said about, um, you know, with a brother and father who recognize those fears and those
Mm-hmm.
struggles, because on the alternative side of that, while I grew up a very Alaskan lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Take that how you will. Um, I the men in my life don't necessarily understand why I think the way I do or the reason why I stand my ground the way I do, even when it comes to them, they don't have a concept of what it means to be a woman. And they don't really try to understand. So it makes me happy to know that you had that.
The Garfield Heights Police Department can be reached at 216-475-5686 if you have any tips at all. You can also submit tips online at the Ohio Attorney General's website at ohioattorneygeneral.gov. It takes a second to navigate from there to the place where you can actually submit tips. You have to go to submit a tip, and then you have to submit, click what kind of tip, 2 times. The case number to reference is 2032. I will post a link directly to the page that they have on Beverly's case on social media and stuff, but it's so long that it would take me 20 minutes to read. As usual, I've looked at the form, and it does have boxes for your name and contact information, but they are not required. The case was reopened recently, and the police have revealed they have information that they're keeping close to the vest. I think they mentioned that they have sent in some DNA to see if they can get that. I'm hopeful, though, that they might have some good leads and just need that last puzzle piece to put together a slam-dunk case. Hopefully, we get to see this solved. This has been the case of Beverly Jarosz, an unsolved murder of a 16-year-old girl in 1964 in Garfield Heights, Ohio. This is a Wild Mystery Podcast appears. I'm Ollie.
And I'm Belle. You can go to our website at awmpa.com to get all of our social media and find our other episodes. We hope that you found this episode interesting and enlightening, and we'll talk to you next Thursday. Stay safe.